a thief, a murderer, and an incestuous person who is not fit to represent Christ on the throne of the Church. People called this horrible priest the most wicked of popes because he soiled St. Peter's chair for 9 years. This is how the French scholar and pamphleteer Louis Marie DeCormenin talked about Pope John XIV. He was Supreme Pontiff and ruler of the Papal States from 955 to 964, and is known as one of the worst popes in history, if not the worst. The papal pornocracy. Some historians of the Catholic Church call the time John was pope the Dark Century, while others call it the papal pornocracy, which means rule of prostitutes. It had been a long time since the Carolingian Empire fell apart. That empire was the best at protecting the papacy's freedom and integrity. Since then, Rome and the Pope have been run by strong Italian families that are rivals. After Pope Sergius III was elected in 904, the papacy was safe in the hands of the Theophylacti line. It was Theophylactus, Count of Tusculum, who put Sergius on the throne. But for most of the early 10th century, Marozia, Theophylactus's daughter, was the real power in Rome. She was called Senatrix of Rome for this reason. Marozia was married to Sergius III and had an affair with 2 others, Anastasia III and Lando. She then killed a 3rd pope, John X, so that her and Sergius's child could become Pope John XI in 931. Hugh of Provence, king of Italy, was a close family member, so she married him. But while Marozia was busy running Rome and choosing popes, she forgot about her other son, Alberic, who was Duke of Spoleto and half-brother of Pope John. Alberic was mad at his mother for ignoring him in favor of John, and he hated Hugh so much for punching him in the face at a party at the Pope fortress, Castel Sant'Angelo. In 932, Alberic led a group of people to attack the castel and get rid of his mother and stepfather as rulers. Hugh got away through a window, but Marozia and Pope John were caught and locked up in the castle. Marozia was never seen or heard from again, but John was freed and used as a slave by his half-brother. For 20 years, Alberic was in charge of Rome. Hugh tried to return to power many times, but he was always stopped. He chose 4 popes, and one of them, Stephen VIII, he killed by cutting him up for not following his orders. It's clear that Alberic had high dreams for his son because he named his son Octavianus after the great emperor Augustus, who had a son with another woman. In 954, when he was only 40 years old, Alberic got a fever that killed him. The Basilica and Vatican would not be built for another 500 years, so he was taken to the tomb of St. Peter on Vatican Hill, where he gathered the most important Romans, including lawmakers, lawyers, bishops, and others. In the past, before the College of Cardinals, it was the people of Rome who officially chose the Pope. Alberic had them swear over the bones of St. Peter that they would choose Octavianus to be the next pope when Agapetus II died. After a few days, he died. The leaders of Rome kept their word when Pope Agapetus died the next year. On December 16, 955, they chose Octavianus, son of Alberic and grandson of Marozia, to be Supreme Pontiff and Master of the Papal States. He was given the papal name John the Brief. Many people would deeply regret making such a terrible mistake. The young pope. The issue was that John was just 18 years old when he was elected pope, making him the youngest pope in the history of the Church. Much more attractive to the young pope were activities such as drinking, gambling, and of course, having sexual encounters. Spiritual and ecumenical issues were the last thing on his mind, just as they are for the majority of wealthy and privileged adolescents. While he was using Rome's wealth to fuel his wild gambling and luxurious lifestyle, John allowed Rome to fall into decay and even encouraged it to do so. In the Lateran Palace, which had been transformed into a massive brothel, John would engage in sexual activity with married ladies in direct public. He had a large number of mistresses. He appointed one of them as governor of one of the papal cities and bribed her with church assets. He also pregnant another mistress whom he inherited from his father. He was also said to have welcomed, or rather kidnapped, female pilgrims who had traveled to Rome to have sexual encounters with him at the Lateran Palace. These women had traveled to Rome to visit him. But while John was busy gambling, whoring, and generally destroying the papacy in whatever way he could, his adversaries were getting closer and closer. In terms of danger, Berengar of Ivrea was by far the most dangerous. The step-grandfather of John, Hugh of Provence, had a nephew named Berengar, who succeeded him as King of Italy. Berengar was John's step-grandfather. When King Berengar began invading the northern Papal States in 960, John had little choice but to fall at the knees of Otto of Saxony, king of the Germans, and call him to Rome as his protector. This was because John's luxurious lifestyle had left him impoverished, and the might of the papal army were no match for Berengar's. Dealing with the devil. The young pope was very wild, but Otto of Saxony was the exact opposite. He was 30 years older than John, and had spent years uniting Germany and bravely beating all of his enemies. He was praised as the perfect example of Christian piety and bravery. As Otto's main goal was to bring back Charlemagne's glorious empire, he gladly accepted John's offer to give him Charlemagne's imperial crown and become Holy Roman Emperor in return for protecting him from Berengar. The emperor's crown of the Holy Roman Empire was given to Otto and his wife by the young pope in St. Peter's Basilica on February 2, 962. He promised to guard and defend the independence of the Papal States, which are the countries from Naples to Venice. In exchange, he promised that any papal land he took back from Berengar would be given back to John. The Holy Roman Empire, which John revived for no reason in 962, would last for another 850 years, with Napoleon being the only one to end it in 1805. While Otto was in Rome for 2 weeks, things quickly got worse between him and John. With Otto now as Holy Roman Emperor, John was told off for being scandalous, and Otto talked to him like a child. John must have felt better when Otto left in March 962 to fight Berengar in northern Italy. At this point, the Pope was only 24 years old, so he decided not to remember any of Otto's talks or promises to the new emperor. A report sent to Otto whilst he was fighting Berengar in the Apennines spoke of his continued mistresses, gambling, and whoring of female pilgrims. It stated, "The palace of the Lateran, which had once sheltered saints, was now a harlot's brothel." In the beginning, Otto seemed unconcerned with the issue. He told the authors of the report, "He is only a boy and will soon change if good men set him an example." On the other hand, his perspective quickly shifted as he learned that John had recently formed a friendship with Aldebert, the son of King Berengar, the exact individual that Otto was fighting a war against for John. Since Pope John had established Otto as emperor, he had developed a sense of apprehension regarding the growing power of Otto, and he watched with apprehension as Otto had won battles and gained territory. So, being the naive and egotistical young man that he was, he entered into negotiations with the Byzantine emperor at Constantinople, Aldebert, and even King Berengar regarding the possibility of participating in a military alliance against Otto. The rumor that John was preparing to hand over his prized and well-earned imperial crown to Aldebert infuriated Otto, and he set out once more for Rome, this time leading an army. Otto was furious at the rumor. It was not John who lingered around. As Otto entered the city, he dashed straight to Tivoli with Aldebert, grabbing as much alcohol, wealth, and ladies as he could get his hands on without being caught. The apostate. As soon as Otto gained control of the city, he convened a synod, which is a council consisting of bishops, cardinals, deacons, and other clerics, consisting of more than 100 churchmen, to discuss John's misdeeds. After 8 years, these had stacked up monumentally. Peter, Bishop of Narni, said he had seen John ordain a deacon in a stable. Cardinal Benedict said John had received money from people to make them bishops, including making a 10-year-old boy Bishop of Todi. He had publicly hunted. He had blinded his confessor, Benedict. He had killed Cardinal John after castrating him. He had set houses on fire and ridden around Rome in armor. He made toasts to the devil. Whilst gambling, he asked for the assistance of pagan gods like Jupiter and Venus, instead of the Christian God. Following his hearing of all of this, Otto wrote a letter to John, in which he requested that John return to Rome and answer for these crimes, while assuring John that he would not be harmed in any way. But the scorned pope had other ideas, writing to Otto and the bishops of the synod. "We hear you wish to make another pope. If you do, I excommunicate you by Almighty God, and you have no power to ordain no one or celebrate Mass." John's threats were ridiculed by the bishops, who were intoxicated with the sense of security that Otto's presence in Rome had provided them with. They even criticized the offensive grammar that John had used in his letter, saying, "We always thought that two negatives made a positive." The synod dutifully excommunicated the apostate John after John had declined to appear before them for a second time. He was too busy hunting. And on December 1st, 963, they elected Leo VIII, who was unexpectedly the candidate of Emperor Otto to the position of pope. However, it is important to keep in mind that the people of Rome were the ones who elected a pope. It was not a group of dissatisfied bishops, and it was most certainly not the emperor. It is possible that John was a lustful apostate, but he was Rome's lascivious apostate. Rome had elected John, and they were not willing to accept the puppet of some German barbarian. In accordance with the law, the citizens of Rome rose up against Leo's election, and the Otto's occupying forces violently put down their rebellion. Otto, however, was unable to remain in Rome indefinitely. Despite the fact that he had his puppet pope in place, he still had Berengar to cope with, and his feudal lords were urging that he return to Germany. Because of this, Otto left Rome in the month of January 964. Very little time had passed since Otto's army had left the Eternal City when John, who was both furious and volatile, came to reclaim his papacy. Bloody revenge and death. The rapid and dreadful vengeance that John exacted against the bishops and other adversaries was what he did. A number of individuals had their tongues removed, some had their hands or fingers taken, and a few even had their noses removed with the use of a scissors. The 26th of February was the day that he established his own synod, which nullified all of the judgments that had been made by the previous synod. Additionally, he excommunicated the now anti-pope Leo, who had swiftly fled to the side of his master Otto as soon as John returned to Rome. Even though John was once again the Supreme Pontiff and the master of Rome, he would only be able to take pleasure in this restoration for a short period of time. There are a few different accounts regarding the manner in which Pope John XII passed away on May 14, 964. One account asserts that he suffered a stroke as a result of exerting himself excessively while having sex with a married woman. Another account asserts that he died of internal bleeding after being beaten up by the husband of the mentioned woman after he discovered them in bed together. Regardless of the circumstances, Pope John XII passed away in the same manner in which he had lived his life. He was suffocated in drunkenness, sin, blood, and sex. He brought the papal office and the chair of St. Peter into disrepute, and he brought the papacy to its lowest point in its 2 millennia of history. It was only 27 years old. We hope you liked this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're a history addict, and please let us know about what civilization or time period we should talk about. Also, watch another video here.